Daniel chapter 2, verse 28. But there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets, and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. God reveals secrets and makes known what will be in the latter days. And the word latter, as it's used with days, is found in Deuteronomy 31, verse 29, that says, For I know that after my death you will utterly corrupt yourselves, and turn aside from the way which I have commanded you, and evil will befall you in the latter days. Now, what Moses is saying here was true of Israel of old. After he died, they did corrupt themselves and turn aside. But it's also true spiritually of the churches and congregations. Remember, the two witnesses were lying dead in the street in Revelation chapter 11. And the two witnesses are typified by Moses and Elijah. Moses, because he represents the law, and Elijah, the prophets. And so as Moses declared, that I know that after my death ye will utterly corrupt yourselves, and turn aside from the way which I commanded you. See, he represents the law, so he commands. And that's exactly what did happen once the two witnesses died. Then the church, the corporate body, turned corrupt and went aside. They no longer followed the way of God. And again, that happened at the end of the church age, and we know the date, May 21, 1988, the 13,000th year of Earth's history, and that would fit with the evil that would befall them in the latter days. So the phrase latter days has application to the beginning of the Great Tribulation period. Now this is confirmed in Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 14. Therefore, Son of man, prophesy and say unto Gog, Thus saith the Lord Jehovah, In that day, when my people of Israel dwelleth safely, shalt thou not know it? And thou shalt come from thy place out of the north parts, thou and many people with thee, all of them riding upon horses, a great company, and a mighty army. And thou shalt come up against my people of Israel, as a cloud to cover the land. It shall be in the latter days. And I will bring thee against my land, that the heathen may know me, when I shall be sanctified in thee, O Gog, before their eyes. We can know that the reference to Gog and Magog in the latter days ties in with the Great Tribulation, because it's brought up in Revelation 20, verse 7, And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And they went up on the breadth of the earth, and compassed the camp of the saints about, and the beloved city. And fire came down from God out of heaven, and devoured them. And again, the loosing of Satan is simultaneous with the end of the church age and the beginning of the Great Tribulation, and that is tied in with Gog and Magog coming after the camp of the saints, or Israel, as is said in Ezekiel 38. So again, the Great Tribulation is connected to that phrase, the latter days. And we'll just look at one more place in Daniel chapter 10, verse 14. Now I am come to make thee understand what shall befall thy people in the latter days, for yet the vision is for many days. And once again, we see that God is speaking of making to understand, or making known, what will happen in the latter days, just as he's doing in Daniel chapter 2, as Daniel was granted understanding of the dream and the interpretation of it. God is indicating he will bring to understanding certain truths that have been hidden, sealed up until the time of the end. And the time of the end agrees with the latter days. And then he makes known. It's why I believe that the word interpretation is found 13 times in Daniel chapter 2, because the time of the end, or the latter days, began in the year 1988, the 13,000th year of Earth's history. It's why in Nehemiah chapter 8, 13 men are named in verse 7. Also Jeshua and Bani and Sherebiah, Jamin, Akkub, Shebethai, Hadijah, Maaseiah, Kelita, Azariah, Jozabad, Hanan, Pelaiah, and the Levites caused the people to understand the law, and the people stood in their place. So they read in the book, in the law of God distinctly, and gave the sense and caused them to understand the reading. And in Nehemiah 8, God speaks of the last day. They were observing the Feast of Tabernacles from the first day to the last day, and that phrase identifies with the last day of the world, the Feast of Tabernacles with the end of the world, and the number 13 comes to view. 13 men caused the people to understand. They gave the sense of the reading of the Bible. Is it coincidental? 13 times God mentions interpretation. Or what about in Genesis when Jacob enters into Egypt and goes before Pharaoh and tells him, when Pharaoh asks his age, that he's 130 years old, and at that same time Joseph was 39, and both numbers are very much connected with the number 13. 130 is 10 times 13, 39 is 3 times 13. And it's at a time when Joseph made himself known to his brethren. It says in Genesis 45, and he had been hidden. Joseph had concealed himself, who's a type of Christ, the Word, and they didn't recognize him. He made himself known to his brethren, and he revealed the timeline for the famine. He said there's already been 2 years of famine, and there'll be 5 years more. So he let them know the beginning was 2 years earlier, and that was a dividing point because now he was revealing himself, and he told them the end year, the 7-year famine, would conclude in the year 1872 BC. So dates were given, a timeline was given, as Joseph made himself known to his brethren at the age of 39, 3 times 13. Then Jacob heard Joseph was alive, that Joseph had revealed himself, and he packed up his house and his family, and they all went into Egypt. And then Pharaoh asked him his age. I'm 130. 10 times 13, 10 pointing to completeness, 13 to the end of the world, to the time of the latter days, the time when God would reveal these things to his people in a similar way that Joseph revealed himself to his brethren. Well, we can see the Bible places a strong emphasis upon God revealing himself. And yes, the whole Bible is a record of his revelation, which means revealing of himself. And yet the Bible places a special emphasis upon God revealing himself even in a greater way at the time of the end. Remember in Daniel 12, verse 4, But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. And how can knowledge be increased? What's the only way that knowledge can be increased? Well, no man can know anything of the things of God except the Father, the Spirit of God, reveal them. And so God announced his intention to reveal, to make known secret things, the things that have been hidden in the Bible for thousands of years. But he would make them known to the prophets. He will do nothing, in fact, but he revealeth his secret unto his servants, the prophets, the elect body of believers. They are the recipients of the revelation. God opens their understanding, like Jesus opened the understanding of the disciples on the road to Emmaus, so that they might understand the Scriptures. And he has done the same with his people at this time. The people of God have been blessed with information that has first saved us from the horrible death of remaining in the churches and congregations and being bundled as a tare for the burning. And as God reveals truth, all the other information has been nothing but a blessing, a wonderful blessing from God.